around 1:30. Okay. And then there's a ladies' majlis at Sisters Sadaf Zahra's residence in Worcester. That's on Friday, the 12th. Okay. So the men's majlis next week is on Saturday, and the ladies' majlis on the 12th. With that, I'd request Sheikh Vinay Khetia to please take the member. One loud salawat for him. Yes, there.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المبارك الفاتحة خصوصا لسيد نزير Hussain Bukhari, Sayyid Nazar Hussain Bukhari and all marhumin of Bukhari family. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين مستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والحمد لله رب العالمين وهو بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على خيرة خلقه أجمعين وهو رحمته للعالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. Continuing with our discussion from last night, I want to quickly summarize. And as I was beginning, the way I operate is every discussion that I bring forward has to be moored in a particular verse of the Quran. Particular verse of the Quran has to be anchored within. And when you look at the Quran, there's just so many verses to choose from. Each verse can be, can apply in one way or another to so many different things. And the verses that I chose tonight is from Surah Al-Insan. The first two verses, which essentially states that, look, and it's Surah Al-Insan, it's a surah about mankind, humankind. That we've created mankind from a microscopic drop, from this single little drop, nabtalihi, and then we tested him by giving him hearing and giving him eyes, giving him sight and giving him ears. So he's gone from this nutfatin amshajin, from this clot, from this microscopic drop of fluid and liquid, which as itself is even najis and impure. In the sense of it being among the mutanajisat. And from that comes insan. And then we gave him sight and we gave him ears. Imma hadayna sabil, and we've guided him to the path. And now either he will be grateful or he will be ungrateful. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. Al-insan bayna khayarain. Humankind is between two choices now. This is the road. This is a fork in the road that God is saying. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. Khalas. Wa la thalith لَهُمَا. There is no third option. There's no thalith. إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. Either they are thankful to God in living a life of obedience, in living a life of servitude, in living a life of thankfulness and thanksgiving and humility and belief and faith, or they live a life of disbelief, a life of ingratitude, a life of arrogance and forgetfulness. إما شاكرا وإما كفورا. يعني الإنسان بين خيارين. Humankind is between two choices only. This is it. But as we spoke about last night, after the Second World War, with the rise of what is known as post-war affluence, and the rise of this post-war media as well, media empires, a counterculture was born. A counterculture which was in the baby boomer generation, many of them I see right here. In that particular baby boomer generation, a cultural and social movement emerged, particularly in the United States and Britain and France, particularly, and Germany to a certain extent. Between 1954 and 1974, and its height was between 65 and 72, that a new left emerged. You know how you have left and right on the political spectrum. A new left emerged. Some of it had good, some of it had evil. In that we also have the hippie movement, in that we have the anti-war movement, in that expanded new social science perspectives, is the idea that, and this is very, very important, that religion is essentially a human enterprise. Where did this idea take root now within the universities and within academic institutions, that theology, the study of truth, the study of existence, is no longer important. Rather, religion is merely a human enterprise. It's a human creation. That's something humans have created with their own hands. They'll study human beings and you shall understand religion. This idea, this new social science approach towards religion itself, is something that came out of the Second World War, that was developed within through the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s. Which essentially, you know what it said? Study religion without God. That's what it is. It's simply a human phenomena. And through this period, we also see new styles of dress, new styles of music, art, and film. And concurrently, at the same time, we see a beginning of an experimentation of gender roles. Moms playing. All of this took place in the period following the Second World War, within the first 20 years or 25 years following the end of the war. And the Americans took charge in this regard. Between the Americans and the British, the world was, for the most part, the wealthy of the world were following suit. Having children outside the bond of marriage, this again became something that was more acceptable, normal, through the 70s. And it is very interesting to see that if you can change the way people have relationships and conduct their relationships, you can change an entire society. If you can alter the nature of human, you can alter the entire foundation and bedrock of a society itself, of what a society values, what a society does not value, the nature of our relationships to one another, the importance of paternity as being linked or not linked to marriage. And what we see today with this whole struggle of same-gender marriages and all of this stuff is merely an offshoot of these movements that took place through the 60s and through the 70s. We cannot understand today unless we understand the past. And we cannot understand the struggles that someone in adhere to a life of faith unless we understand what makes up the categories within which we think, the categories that form our mind. Right? For example, as I mentioned, Imran Khan wrote a very interesting article, the president of Pakistan, or prime minister, I don't know which designation he has, but nevertheless, the head of state. He wrote an interesting article, and he said that, and I was really wowed by it, by this article, because he said that when I was growing up, all I wanted to be was a brown sahib. He said brown sahib in the sense of just be a good, obedient, European loving Pakistani. Don't keep a beard. Don't pray. That's the work of Maulanas. I'm an educated, wealthy Pakistani. I'm going to go to Oxford. Imran Khan reflects on his life. He reflects on the mistakes of his life. He reflects on this need that he had to emulate the movements of the 60s and the 70s. Right? Which essentially were completely changing the way we have marriages, our family systems, and what knowledge was. They now told us that these religious books, there's no knowledge in them. They're all human products. So don't pursue Quran, don't read Quran. So what we then have is we have essentially a large portion of a wealthy baby boomer generation that can't even read the Quran. That is a reality. It is the reality in my community in Toronto, and I think it may be the reality in the United States. Why is that the case? Why is it that this generation born by the end of the war into the mid-60s especially, became successful, built institutions, but is severely illiterate when it comes to real spiritual and religious knowledge? Why? This is what Imran Khan is pointing at. He says, because we didn't see any worth in it, because the white man told us it wasn't worthwhile. And I was brought up with wealth, given the privilege to go to Oxford to study. And there I was taught that if I want to be, he is saying, Imran Khan, if I want to be a good Pakistani or a good Desi, then I've got to play the part, to play the role that I've been asked to play, which is the subservient Desi that kisses the ring finger of the beautiful, clean-shaven, civilized, intellectual white man. I'm very surprised that he wrote in such an open way, in about 18 pages, about his own life and what he used to think, the way he used to see religion, and the way he people within Pakistan. And I would almost say that the Khoja community is in a similar way as well. At least it was prior to 1979. We'll talk about that in a moment. Prior to Iranian Revolution, there was almost this disdain, this idea that people who dress like me have nothing better to do, and the real people will go on to be doctors and engineers and speak with British accents and forget about their Islamic heritage altogether. And all of this is in the subservience, to a certain extent, to the movements that took place, both the economic, political, and social currents that developed after the Second World War. And this reminds me of the golden calf of Samiri. It really does, right? Because it's a fitna, it's a test of perception that everybody sees this golden calf of modernity, right? This golden cow, right? The Jews worshiped the golden cow, and Musa came back and he got upset at them, right? After being away for 40 days, right? But the problem, what they realized is this golden cow didn't speak, nor did it guide. It didn't guide them. It didn't have any power of its own. But they were attracted to it because of some of the dust that Samiri had sprinkled within that cow. So it kind of presented itself as being somewhat magical and mystical, but in reality, it had no reality. It didn't guide them. It wasn't something that could guide them. It had no sultan in it itself. It had no power in and of itself. Yet they began to worship this cow, right? This is a story of Samiri. And if we don't know this, then woe upon us. Ya waylana, if we are Muslims and we don't know this, maybe we don't deserve to be Muslims. But I assume we know this, inshallah, this story. I mean, if we are Muslims of this age and we don't know the basic story of the Quran, inshallah, we will go and learn it. May Allah guide us. It's an extremely important part of the Quran. Extremely, extremely important to understand the story, because the lesson behind it was they saw a golden cow and they started worshiping it. Because it looked beautiful, it looked magical, it looked like everything, but it didn't guide. There was no hidayah in that. And happened with modernity, and I am sorry to say, Me Too and Black Lives Matter can be thrown into this golden cow. Because these movements, we have to be very careful, because lately I've been seeing some of our youth putting these hashtags on. Me Too, Black Lives Matter. I'm not against these movements. My point is, in history, the anti-war movements of Vietnam were also coupled with movements were pro-same-gender marriage, pro-drugs, pro-promiscuity, isn't it? Everybody, there's enough people here, and you know what I'm talking about if you're in America at the time. These movements at times can be very, you have to be extremely careful here. Extremely careful. I'm not rejecting the principles of some of these movements, but what they're again like that golden calf. They seem so attractive to jump on, but what values do they really espouse? What are they imparting to us, really? And I'll put Black Lives Matter and Me Too under the same category here. They win over hearts, but win over hearts with what? What are they winning us over to? Yes, in the name of social activism, package of ideas and concepts that are entirely antithetic to any serious spiritual religious worldview. It is. This is a reality. And this was no different with the anti-war movement. The anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and the hippie movement was very similar. These are Trojan horses. Very often they are Trojan horses. And it's no coincidence that at this time we see the Beatles and the Rolling Stones at their height. All of these social, economic, and political factors and cultural factors are coalescing through the 50s, the 60s, and especially into the 70s. To create what Imran Khan said is that subservient, clean-shaven, brown sahib who went to Oxford, who now is in his 50s and 60s and can read the Quran. It's a powerful article. He looks at himself in the mirror. And then he realizes that I've been doing taqleed of whom? And this golden calf at the end of the day this golden cow doesn't guide anybody. Whose family values have I taken? From where have I anchored my life? To what source is my life and my values and my thinking process anchored to? Is it anchored to an ever-changing moral paradigm? Ever-changing? Or is it anchored to immutable absolute values, which are moored and rooted in divine revelation? This is what Allah is saying. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. That we've guided him to the path. Now either he will be grateful or he will be kafir, meaning ungrateful. This is a fork in the road, brothers, sisters. This is a fork in the road. We have to choose what path that we want to take. The world shifted from what we call a theocentric model to an anthrocentric model. A world in which God is the center of existence, the spring of our life, the hope of our life, as we say, right? The source of our life, the source of our happiness, the source of our becoming, the source of our success, the source of our love, to something else, to a world that is now anthrocentric, where the human being now sits at the center, which is known as a renaissance. And what we see today is merely a consequence of that, of those concepts and ideas, developed by people a lot smarter than us. I won't say more faithful, but in terms of paper, a lot more crafty and a lot more smarter. That's for sure. And if we're not careful, we will fall into this ayah, استحوذ عليهم شيطان فأنساهم ذكر الله, that Satan takes possession of them. Possession, yes, possession is a reality. Satanic possession is a reality. استحوذ عليهم شيطان فأنساهم ذكر الله, and he causes them to forget the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أولئك حزب الشيطان حزب الشيطان, and this is the party of Satan. ألا إن حزب الشيطان هم الخاسرون, and is it not the case that the party of Shaitan will be the losers? They will not win. This story will not win with the kuffar, with the ungrateful ones being the muflihun and faizun. No. ألا إن حزب الشيطان هم الخاسرون. But Satan, this is how he works. استحوذ عليهم شيطان. Satan takes possession of them. فأنساهم ذكر الله, and then they start forgetting God. And you know what's the first thing to go when you want to see the decline of a religious community? Jonathan Sacks tells us in his work, Religion and Meaning. Excellent work by the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. Very interesting work. You know what he says? This is the first thing that starts waning from a community is prayer. Prayer. The last thing will be the marriage rituals and the things like that. They'll still come for Maulana, do our nikah. Will they wake up for Fajr or not? Or have they prayed the 5 prayers? That's between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they'll still get the Maulana to do the nikah. As Jonathan Sacks says, these rituals will continue for a while. Eventually those will dissipate and they'll just say a civil marriage is sufficient. But the first thing to this, فَأَنْسَاهُمْ ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ, he will cause them to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dhikr. Because he will implant within their hearts the idea that to be anchored to God through prayer is a waste of time. Ahlan wa sahlan in the modernity. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. And you know the interesting thing is, it's not even Muslims writing about this. These are Christians and Jews. Jonathan Sacks, David Bentley Hart, Charles Taylor. This is not even Muslims. I mean, there are people, Nasser and Chiddick and others, really Murtada Mutahari, Shaykh al-Mutahari, Imam Khomeini, but there's many non-Muslims writing right now about this issue. This is not a Muslim issue. This is an issue of faith and a life grounded in the immutable principles and absolute principles of faith versus a life that is grounded in nothing. It's grounded in that fake golden cow of Samiri, so to speak. And we are at the fork road. We are at the fork in the road. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. Either we are among those who are thankful and grateful, or we are among the kuffar. The choice is ours. We shall choose because God has given us free will. He has given us ikhtiyar. We shall choose the road to which we shall travel. And then it continues. Prepared for the kuffar this punishment to drink in hell, and then we've prepared for the mu'mineen this drink to drink in heaven. If you continue in the ayat, then the consequences of kufr and the consequences of shukr, or the ramifications of these choices, are then lined out in the verses that follow in Surah Al-Insan. Because each choice has a response. And that's why it's Surah Al-Insan. How beautiful of a name. the surah of humankind. Who is insan? So our scholars explain in their books that shaitan can take control of human beings. So there is no doubt that possession exists in Islam. There is no doubt. Istahwada alayhim shaitan. Satan takes control of them. What does he do? He causes them to forget God. Now look at these post-war movements in light of this verse. Now look at these movements of the Beatles and Rolling Stones and all this nonsense in light of this verse. Do they not cause us to forget the remembrance of God? Sure they do. Then would they not be a part of Hizb al-Shaytan? Now Satan can only take possession of those whose hearts are susceptible to being taken possession of. Right? لِيَجْعَلَ مَا يُلْقِي شَيْطَانُ فِتْنَةً لِلَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. That there's a group of people whom the temptation of Satan grabs their hearts because their hearts are already sick. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. وَالْقَاسِيَةُ قُلُوبُهُمْ. And their hearts are hard. وَإِنَّ ظَالِمِينَ لَفِي شِقَاقٍ بَعِيدٍ. And the dhalimeen are cast far away. So two things. Their hearts are sick and their hearts are hard. So hardening and a sickness of the heart. And when these two things happen, yes, the fitna and the temptation of shaitan will take place. As we read in the tradition of the Prophet, Inna shaitan yajri min ibn Adam majra dam, and Satan flows through the blood of the son of Adam, just like his blood flows through his veins. Literally. That Satan can flow through the blood of our veins. In our blood. Because the fitna of shaitan soaks into our heart. We'll get to this in a moment. But this reminds me now of a description of Goldman Sachs. I was reading an article in the New Yorker. This fits so well, this concept of sickness in the heart and shaitan. Totally, from its beginning to its end. There was a trader, one of the top traders, who was asked, describe Goldman for you. This is in the New Yorker. And he says, the God is Goldman. You subjugate yourself to that God, and in return, we will make you a gazillionaire. The God is Goldman. You subjugate yourself to that God, and in return, we will make you a gazillionaire. End quote. I don't know what else would be a deal with the devil. I mean, if that's not a deal with the devil, I don't know what the deal with the devil looks like. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ ذِكْرَ اللَّهِ, and he will cause them to forget the remembrance of God, to forget the life of piety, the life of faith, the life of brotherhood, the life of sisterhood, the life of prayer, the life of humility, the life of charity, the life of social service. All of this is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Satan swears that he will cause them to forget it, that when he takes hold of their sick, polluted and diseased hearts, right? في قلوبهم مرض وقاسية القلوب, and their hearts are hard. Yeah, then they'll subjugate themselves to Goldman Sachs, right? So that they could be made billionaires and gazillionaires. This is a major issue. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And to add insult to injury, we live largely in a world that Guy Eaton describes very beautifully in this book called The King of the Castle, Choice and Responsibility in the Modern World. A fascinating scholar, Guy Eaton. He was a convert, born in Switzerland, educated at King's College in Cambridge, then became a Muslim. And he died about, I think, like 20 years ago. Anyways, he embraced Islam in 1951. Scholar. He writes something interesting here in the introduction to his book. I've been reading this book for some time, very powerful. And he hits the nail right on the head of our prediction. Kufr and iman, meaning belief and unbelief, has become blurred. Neither faith nor infidelity are followed through to their logical conclusion. That nobody is really strict to the end, very few people, and no one is really right through. There's a kind of twilight region inhabited by the many who are neither believers nor unbelievers. They're between daylight and night, in this kind of twilight region, but are carried along by the tide of these times while daylight lasts. There must, they think, be something beyond all this, but they doubt really knows what this something might be. That is insan today. And that is mixed in what is known as a myth of progress. That somehow insan thinks that they're progressing. That they're fed this idea that somehow one generation is better than the next. Who said that? Where is that? Where does that idea come from, that one generation is, that the next generation is better than the previous one? This myth of progress, that somehow humankind is progressing in terms of their GDP, so thus they must be progressing as a race. Yes, in terms of GDP, sure. Yes, we have certainly come up with new ways to manipulate and destroy the environment. Yes, we have. But does that represent human progress in itself? I'm not saying we haven't progressed, but I'm saying, where does this idea come from that we've progressed? If the majority of people are living in this twilight between belief and unbelief, which I think is true to a certain extent, at least in my experience with my own family, aside from my parents, all my cousins live in this twilight. All of them live in this twilight. I don't know if they're going to listen to this or not, but they live in this twilight. They kind of believe, kind of don't believe. I don't know. Maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't. Who knows? It's this very lackadaisical, apathetic attitude towards haqq. The lack of desire to discover these divine and metaphysical realities that exist before us. And this is exactly what Satan looks for in the heart. Because this is what we call shak and raib, that there's a deep doubt and apathy and laziness and childish naivety in the heart is what Satan finds. And then he dwells in it, as Allama Tabatabai says, yastaqar fihi. As Allama explains in Al-Mizan, that then Satan dwells within that heart. And he lives within it. And he takes residence within it. And then the world that we see, as Allama explains, Allama Tabatabai explains very beautifully, that the world through the eyes through which they see is now determined by Satan himself. That he now begins to attempt to change their vision and the prism through which they see the world and existence and the decisions by which they make. And then it becomes possible for a Shia mother to post a picture in a swimming suit with her children on Facebook. Then it becomes possible. Yes. Or a Shia father to post a picture of himself and his children without any hijab in a swimming pool for everybody to see. This becomes possible because of a futura an al-haq, that there is this lazy, apathetic, idiotic, foolish attitude towards the seeking of haqa'iq and ma'arif ilahiyya. To the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, it is seen a Maulana Nukamche, as it's saying Gujarati. This is a Maulana's work. This is a sickness in the hearts, a pollution, a disease. في قلوبهم مرض وقاسية القلوب. And then no doubt, as Allama Tabatabai says, بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يعملون. That no doubt then, that what they do will now govern their heart. ران على قلوبهم, as the ayah says in Surah Mutaffifin. And Alama explains in Al-Mizan again and again. Alama Tabatabai explains that then no doubt the image and the surahs that they see through their eyes will now be crafted and molded by someone else. Not by the light of faith, but the darkness of their own jahalat and ignorance and lackadaisical apathy towards al-ma'arif al-ilahiyya, the divine realities. And then it becomes possible for someone to claim to belong to a Shia community, to have Shia friends, the Shia family, and then post images of themselves in a way that, if we describe in the traditions the nature of those of the person who does that, many of you would call me an extremist and never invite me here again if I was to actually read the ahadith of what the ahadith sharifah say about that. I wouldn't even read it, because that's the point at which we're at. If I was to read that, I'd be considered an extremist. Go look in Jawahir al-Kalam yourself of Muhammad Hassan Najafi. What the ahadith, what the ahadith of the Prophet and the Aimma Tahirin describe about those kinds of things. The words that they use, Ya Allah. But why? Because when the heart is sick, when the heart is diseased, when the heart is blind, it can do these things. And then to add insult to injury, such individuals would want to become board members of religious communities. Is this not possession of them and causes them to forget the remembrance of God? Not because Satan has sultan in himself, not because Satan has power in himself, no, but because their hearts were susceptible to the possession of shaitan. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the longer we sit on the fence in this so-called twilight zone between daylight and night, the sicker we will be. The sicker insan will be. Imma Allah is clear. There's no comfortable place in between to sit between shukr and kufr. There's no comfortable place in between, brothers. But yet we see most people live very fractured lives. Their lives are fractured. They're split into so many different pieces because the one God, the one message does not unite everything that they do in Tawheed. That La ilaha illallah is a unifying factor that brings together every aspect of our life, every aspect of our existence for dunya wal akhirah. That when we understand La ilaha illallah, we see the one in the many. We understand that that is the unifying principle that brings us all together, that makes us whole, that gives us life, that gives us happiness, that gives us wisdom, that gives us enlightenment. And a fractured life, life of confusion, hayr, promiscuity. الناس يتخذون يمينا وشمالا, as the Imam say. The people are taking from here and huna wa hunak, from right here and there, right and left, min kulli makan. That's a fractured life. وَنَحْنُ وَشِيعَتُنَا هُدَيْنَا إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. But us and our Shia, as Imam Sadiq said, are guided to the straight path. Not taking from here, hunna wa hunak, from here and there. Taking every piece of it, every thing that they could hear, they take. And this again refers to something even deeper. We're going to go a level even deeper than this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We're going to go even deeper to Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. That how does this work, the satanic possession? It works through the heart. The heart is an organ that absorbs everything that it sees. And it's described as drinking. Shut up. Verb for drinking is used with regards to what the heart, how the heart operates. And the problem is if it drinks the wrong Kool-Aid or the wrong drink, operate according to what it drinks. Imam has a beautiful dua number 17, so powerful. I suggest you all go and look at it in the Sahifa Sujadiyah. That, oh God, we seek refuge in you from the whispers, from the inspirations of Satan. Shaitan al-Rajim, wa kayduhu wa makayiduhu, from his trickery and his plotting. From whatever security he may give us. Now we're told intention in the sense of kasal and laziness. Amdan, meaning with the intention to do that, then Satan can take root within the heart. That's the reason why the beginning of Salah is so important. Number 2 is ghadab, anger. Al-ghadab min ash-shaytan. We read so many traditions about this, that when someone is angry without just cause, that is, not angry for the sake of God, but just in that state of egotistic anger, when your ego feels a little hurt and you get angry, that's the moment where Satan seizes your heart. Then al-ghadab min ash-shaytan, because anger is from Satan itself. Al-ghadab min ash-shaytan, that the anger is from Satan, and you shall know in that moment, we're told in the traditions, that Satan has entered the qalb, the heart. And the mu'minun taqu idha massahum ta'ifun min shaitan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, I can give you all the ayat number after, that when Satan touches them, massahum, inna alladhina ittaqu, that those who have piety and God wariness, idha massahum ta'ifun min shaitan, that when they're touched by ta'ifun, by one of the Satans, ta'ifun min shaitan, by a group from shaitan, tadhakkaru, they remember. They recall God. Na'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Na'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Na'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. There's a lot of power in ista'adha, in understanding what the ista'adha is, because they understand their soul, they understand their heart, they know that ghadab is from shaitan, and since they say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim, I seek refuge from Satan. They remember God, فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ, and then they shall see again, Allah says. That they go from that momentary blindness back to basira. إِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. Because they're aware of the state of their heart. And they know that anger, ghadab, is like heroin for shaitan. Hits right into the veins. That's what it is. We told them, ghadab, 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 again and again. We read in so many riwayat about this. And then we read so beautifully, Allahumma washrab qulubana inkar amala. Inkar amalihi. That, oh Allah, let our heart consume, drink the rejection of the amal of shaitan. That let my heart be consumed with the inkar of Satan's actions, not the iqbal of Satan. Our heart can either have two kinds of drink, of shurb. Either it's the inkar of shaitan or the iqbal of shaitan. Either it is the rejection, the detestment, the hatred of everything that Satan represents, is the iqbal, the acceptance, the laziness, the silence, the sense of what does it matter? As we know, a lack of an opinion is as good as accepting the precedent. There's two states the heart can be in, as Imam Zain explains. Because this is mafhum al-mukhalafa. Mafhum al-mukhalafa means the opposite understanding. That, oh Allah, allow our hearts to be consumed with the inkar, with the rejection of the amal of shaitan. Likewise, we would say, oh Allah, protect our hearts from consuming the acceptance of the actions of shaitan. That, my dear brothers and sisters, the day we stop disliking, the day we stop hating and disliking with the bottom of our hearts, the amal of shaitan, is the day we know that we have been possessed by Satan himself. When at the bottom of our hearts, we dislike it. At the bottom of our hearts, we are moved. At the bottom of our hearts, we feel, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in God. I seek refuge in God. I seek refuge. Khalisna minan nar ya Rab. Ya Mujir, Ya Mujir, Ya Mujir. But if that feeling is if that basic inkar is not in the heart, then we're in trouble. And what these movements have done, coming back to the modernity, is they've taken that inkar away from the heart. They've erased it slowly, slowly, slowly from the heart. Thus now we'll have a kid who will say, well, what's wrong with having two dads? What's wrong with two moms? I don't see anything wrong with it. Now, how are you supposed to, nobody's saying to go hate anyone or put anyone down or go, but at least in your heart, you know that your religion doesn't accept it. Catholicism is the same, Judaism is the same. No one's saying to go and say things in the streets or hurt people. No, everyone lives as they want to live. People of belief live as they want to live. But what your heart feels is not up to someone else. You don't have to accept that in your heart. Yet today, we have seen young people in our Shia community in America and Canada change their colors to rainbow on their social media. We know this. For whatever reason, or they're a part of some political movement. Again, that's what I mean, that these political, social activist movements are often Trojan horses for other things as well. Yes, this is a reality. And we see this amongst our youngsters, our shabab. Because they often don't have the perception to see things as they are, yara al-haqaiq, to see the realities as they are. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I want to end with a poem before I discuss, before we go to to Imam Zain al-Abidin and his shahadat. It's a very powerful poem from Imr al-Qais. Which talks about the nature of this satanic fitna. How does it work? Fi shi'r hikmah, as the Prophet has said, that in poetry is wisdom. This is a pre-Islamic poetry. And this is some of the poetry that survived into the Islamic text because of its hikmah and its wisdom. He says, and please, this is metaphorical. This is metaphorical. Please don't take it literally. Poetry is metaphorical. Okay? It's not meant to be taken literally, right? That's the nature of poetry. The scholars always understood this in Islamic history. لِحَرْبُ أَوَّلُ مَا تَكُونُ فَتِيًّا. That when war arrives, it comes dressed up as a young woman. تسعى بزينتها لكل جهول. That every young man starts running towards it. This is the nature of war. It's fitna, this enticing fitna of war. حتى إذا اشتعلت وشب درامها, until the fire starts burning and you're engulfed in its flames. Diramuha is the driest of fires, like burning hay. وَلَّتْ عَجُوزًا غَيْرُ ذَاتْ حَلِيلِ, and then it becomes an old woman who has lost her husband. شَمْطَاءُ يُنْكَرُ لَوْنُهَا وَتَغَيَّرَتْ, and then it withers into gray and the color changes. مَكْرُوهَةً لِلشَّمِّ وَالتَّقْبِيلِ, and then it starts smelling. But it began and it arrived in this form, which if we are not careful, looks golden, looks appealing, looks attractive. And they run. And then they find themselves engulfed in its flames. And now they find that it starts stinking and it starts smelling. And now they're stuck. They're consumed in its fire and it's lost all its taste. That's the golden calf, so to speak, of Samiri from the Quran. That's what happens when we're not more to the values and the qawaid and the principles of Iman and Amal Salih. That's what happens. And it's amazing how this poem survived from the early Islamic period. It's very, very fascinating. Imrul Qais, this is before the period, this is in the pre-Islamic period. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We're told in the traditions that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam wept for 33 years. And no wonder, you know, when I think about it, brothers and sisters, and I read the Maqatil of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When I first cried, I'll share with you this moment because this is the day of Musibah. The first time I ever wept was many, many, many years ago when I became a Muslim of Tabari. And I began reading the final moments of Imam Hussein's life. That they began kicking him on the ground. These are shayateen. These are truly people whose hearts are sick, who have been taken over by Satan himself. That Satan runs through their blood, definitely. They began, wallah, this is the first time I weep, brothers. When I read about how they began kicking the Imam on the ground. رَفَصُهُ بِرِجْلِهِ. This is in Tabari's Maqtal and Ibn Sa'd, not even Shia books, but Sunni books, that they were kicking the Imam alayhi salam on the ground, firing arrows into his mouth. Into his mouth. This is what human beings would do to another human being. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. Here we see the meaning of kufr. Torturing him for hours, and his son was helpless. His son could do nothing. This was the musibah of Imam Zain al-Abidin's life, brothers and sisters. If we don't understand this, then we've missed the point. It is no wonder that this Imam Salamullahi alayhi cried for 33 years over his father. Night and day, remembering the torn body, the severed limbs, the bloodstained chest. إِنَّهُ بَكَى حَتَّى خِيفَ عَلَى عَيْنَيْهِ, that he would cry until his eyes would turn black. His eyes would change color from the tears. Because all they could hear of their father was his screams of Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. That no Nabi, no Wali of Allah has ever been treated this way. Not Nabi Yahya alayhi salam, no. Not like this. This kind of torture. I mean, imagine, you know that Azadar Hussein, that they even stole his helmet before killing him? That they broke it over his head and then it fell onto the ground. And while he was laying there, they began to steal possessions from him. This is a musibah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It is no wonder that his son would cry for 33 years. 33 years he would cry. Because he was not able to come to the aid of his father. He was not able to defend his father. Because Allah had ordained it as that way, because there would be no Imam after. But that does not mean that his heart would not pain, that his heart would not be broken. He is a human being. If the Anbiya, if Nabi Yaqub would cry for so many years and Yusuf had not even died, what about Imam Zain al-Abidin? He said, how can I not cry when I look at water when my father was refused water? According to some riwayat from Tabari, there's even references that they even had water in front of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And he said, Al-atash qad qatalani, al-atash qad qatalani, al-atash qad qatalani. The thirst is killing me. He began to plead with them for water, that at least before you kill a man, you give him water. Al-atash qad qatalani. And we read this in Ziyarat al-Nahiya, that the Imam continuously went to the Furat. وَرَشَقُوهُ بِسِهَامٍ وَنِبَالٍ, as Imam al-Zaman says. And they showered his body with spears and arrows. رَشَقُوهُ بِسِهَامٍ وَنِبَالٍ. How could Imam not cry for 33 years after this? After seeing his father like a porcupine, that his body wouldn't even go onto the ground, it would be elevated from the number of arrows in his body. Found with 33, some say 35 stab wounds in his body. That's just the stab wounds. That the traditions state that they even stabbed him after killing him. That even after they killed him, they continue to stab him. That the man has died and they are still stabbing him. Because many of the wounds or riwayat, they also indicate were post-mortem. Now how? Who then would blame Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam for mourning for 33 years? When his father, the wali of Allah, the hujjat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is treated in such a way. And at the age of 57, our Imam alayhi salam suffered from poisoning. From Walid bin Abdul Malik, la'anahullah. And imagine how he remembered the suffering of his father. Imam Zain al-Abidin suffered from poisoning, and we know the poison, of course, rots your insides, right? It's like a burning inside the body. And imagine at his death, he tells Imam Bakr, he takes Imam Bakr and he puts him onto his chest, and he tells him, Ya Bunayya, Iyaka wa dhulma man la yajidu alayka nasiran illallah. Oh my son, know that the one who is madloom shall not find a helper except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine, this is the final words of a dying man, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, that the one who is madloom will not have a nasir except for Allah. Why? Because we say, Assalamu alayka, Assalamu ala gharib al-ghuraba. We send our salams to Imam Hussein. Why? Because we say that you are the one who is defending without any nasir. Bila nasir. Al-muhami bila mu'in. You were protecting your family without any assistant. Assalamu ala al-muhami bila mu'in. His father did not have anyone at his death. Al-madhloom bila nasir. I don't know if this al-madhloom bila nasir. That you're not only madhloom, but that you have nobody to be with you. And imagine, even at his death, the Imam remembered his father. Even as he left this world, he remembered the madlumiyat of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. That his father was thirsty and alone. And that's why we read in the poem, لو فاطمة خلت الحسين مجدلا. This is a poem going back to the Sahabi of Imam al-Rida. That, O Fatima, لو فاطمة خلت الحسين مجدلا وهو ماتت عطشانا بشط فراتي. That, O Fatima, your son is laying there مجدلا, all alone at the Furat. وماتت عطشانا بشط فراتي. That he has died thirsty at the edge of the Furat. Fatima qumi wandubi. O Fatima, stand and do matam. ولتمت الخد Fatima عنده. And Fatima stands and begins to hit her cheek over her son. لتمت الخد فاطمة عنده وأجريت دمع العين في الوجنات. And the tears of Zahra begin to come down her cheeks. Why? Son is عطشانا غريبا مجردا, alone, discard, uryanan. All of these states. And this is how he died. And we read in the traditions, in the Nahiya al-Muqaddasa, that when the sweat of death appeared upon your face, you began to open your right hands and your left hands. Can you imagine? اختلفت بالانقباض والانبساط شمالك ويمينك. Your right hand and left hand started spasming, opening and closing. تدير طرفا خفيا إلى رحلك وبيتك. You began to peek towards your family. قد شغلت بنفسك عن ولدك وأهاليك. That in your final moment you were busy with worry about your daughters. You were worried about what would happen to your children. This is a narration of Sahab al-Asr wa Zaman, of Imam al-Zaman himself, not based on a poem. Why? Because Shaykh Tusi reports from Abdullah bin Hassan, who reports from his mother Fatima bint al-Hussein, who says that I was a small girl, ana jari'atun saghira, that I was a small girl when the mob raided our tents. And he took my legs and he began to shake them because he was breaking the 2 gold anklets that I had on my legs. Now, my brothers and sisters, how would they get the anklet of Fatima bint al-Hussein without lifting her abaya up? No wonder the Imam says that in my final, the Imam Zaman says that, oh my grandfather, in your final moments, what were you consumed with? Of course, with Allah and the worry for your children and what would happen to them. Because Fatima bint al-Hussein, as narrated by Shaykh al-Tusi, tells us that when they entered my tent, they began to break, and when they couldn't get it off, they يفضوا الخلقالين من رجلي, that they just ripped it from my ankles. Waba Abdul Yafuddu means to force it, that she did not open it for him, that he forced it from her. And then she says to him, why? She looks at him and he is crying. She says, why are you crying? كيف لا أبكي وأنا أسلب ابنة رسول الله. He says, how can I not cry when I'm stealing and looting the daughter of Rasulullah? So she says to him, simple, don't loot my body. You know what he says? If I don't do it, someone else is going to do it. This is the musibah of Ahlul Bayt salamullahi alayhim. And that's why we're told in the traditions of, even from Tabari, I'll narrate one more tradition to you from Tabari, with an authentic chain of transmission. Ibn Sa'd narrates it in the Tabaqat as well, that when they entered the camps, the women struggled so much. This is what Imam al-Hussein was worried about at his death. That the women struggled so much that the riwayah tells us that they began to fight the men. They began to fight. The women, Zainab, Kulthum, would not sit and let these men do this to them. So the men began to rip their malahif from their backs. And dhuhurihim, that they began to tear their malahif, which is their scarves. So the women would be running one way, and the men would be holding on to their scarf from the other side. This is what we read in the Maqatil brothers and sisters. This is what we read in the books of history. This is the musibah of Hussein ibn Ali. This is why Imam Zain Abidin would cry for 33 years until his eyes would turn black. Why Imam Rida says, Akraha jafunana, that on the day of Hussein, Akraha jafunana, that our eyelids tear, that there is no amount of azar, there is no amount of mourning, there is no amount of buka that can do justice to this musibah. Ala la'natullahi ala qawmi dhalimin wa saya'lamu alladhina dhalamu ay munqalibin yanqalibun. Matum Hussein.
Dua sehat for knowing him.
Let me do my so soon before this.
Y'all sing, 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 y'all say, 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 सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है बेपर्दा हरम साथ हैं बेपर्दा हरम साथ हैं और शाम चला है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है ऐशिम्रे लई केस पे तू बरसाता है कोड़े ऐशिम्रे लई केस पे तू बरसाता है कोड़े आबिद तो बड़ी देर से बेहोश पड़ा है आबिद तो बड़ी देर से बेहोश पड़ा है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गए ना मारे सकीना को तमाचे ऐसी तमगर ना मारे सकीना को तमाचे ऐसी तमगर एहसास यतीमी ही बड़ी सख्त सजा है सजाद को बेमौत ये गम मारे गया है या हुसैन या
रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए रोने के लिए मिलके आम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, के लिए तेरा नाम, रोने तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी सज्जाद तेरा नाम, के लिए तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए तू शहंशाह दर्द है, तू शहंशाह दर्द है, बतला रही है शाम, रोने के लिए तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए स्लो, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, तू शहंशाह दर्द है, तू शहंशाह दर्द है, बतला रही है शाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, चला बेकसों का कारवां, बीमार लोगों सारे बा है संग सरे उरियां, चाहे लापता की बेटियां, करबो बला के दश्त में, करबो बला के दश्त में, बरपा है कोहराम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम। ज़ैनब पुकारी बेवतन भाई मेरा है बेकफन, कर दे उसे कोई दफन, मेरे हाथों में बांधी रसल, हाय कैसे सुना होगा, हाय कैसे सुना होगा, बीमारी ने पैगाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम। ज़ैनब पुकारी बेवतन भाई मेरा है बेकफन, कर दे उसे कोई दफन, मेरे हाथों में बांधी रसल, हाय कैसे सुना होगा, हाय कैसे सुना होगा, बीमारी ने पैगाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, है तेरा नाम, काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम। तू शहंशाह दर्द है, तू शहंशाह दर्द है, बतला रही है शाम, रोने तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए मस्तूरों में एक मर्द है, गैर से चेहरा जर्द है, कारिबल की जमीन गर्द है, ज़ैनब का दिल में दर्द है, रोता है सर झुका के, रोता है सर झुका के, करता नहीं कलाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम। मुश्किल थी बड़ी वो घड़ी, दरबार में ज़ैनब खड़ी, शबीर के ला पे छड़ी, सज्जाद ने पहनी कड़ी, दरबार यजीदी के, दरबार यजीदी के, लर्ज़े थे दरबार, के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रोने के लिए काफी नाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रो सज्जाद तेरा नाम। तू शहंशाह दर्द है, तू शहंशाह दर्द है, बतला रही है शाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम, रो जिंदान से आपोश है, तन्हाई किया होश है, आबिद कहे ना होश है, दम टूटा है होश है, उम्मत ने सकीना को, उम्मत ने सकीना को दिया मौत का इनाम, रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम रोने के लिए काफी है हम रोने के लिए तेरा नाम रोने काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम कट जाते सैयदों के सर ज़ैनब न जाती दर बदर बीमारी का टुकड़े जिगर रोता है लहू हर नगर हाय मंजिलों पे तड़पना हाय मंजिलों पे तड़पना सज्जाद तेरा काम रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम तू शहंशाह दर्द है तू शहंशाह दर्द है बतला रही है शाम रोने काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम रोने के लिए काफी है सज्जाद तेरा नाम चल बेकसों का कारवां बीमारी लोगों सारी बाहें संग सरे उरिया शाह लापता की बेटियां करीबो भला के दश्त में करीबो भला के दश्त में बरपा है कोहर यो गम मुका गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो 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 गम सब मिलके पढ़े दी जवानी हो गम कहा गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सब मिलके जो आते हो गम का गया है रुलियां ने विच बाजारा रुलियां ने विच बाजारा क्यों आया ता कुरानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी माया ने दी पुकारे देवे जे कोई चादर माया ने दी पुकारे देवे जे कोई चादर मुश्किल च कोई कर दे मुश्किल च कोई कर दे सैयदा ते मेहरबानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम का गया है सज्जाद दी जवानी हो गम असगर नू याद कर दी हर उजड़ी गोद मां दी असगर नू याद कर दी हर उजड़ी गोद मां दी ओदे कतल ते छा गई है ओदे कतल ते छा गई है कायनात ते हैरानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम सजाद दी जवानी हो गम सजाद दी जवानी रुलियां ने विच बाजारा रुलियां ने विच बाजारा क्यों आया ता कुरानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी सजाद दी जवानी हो गम सजाद दी जवानी दिखला ज़मी तरोड़ ऊटन पे पिलावे दिखला ज़मी तरोड़ ऊटन पे पिलावे सैयदां दे बाल प्यासे सैयदां दे बाल प्यासे रह गए ना मिलया पानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हे सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है महायानी दी पुकारे देव जे कोई चादर महायानी दी पुकारे देव जे कोई चादर मुश्किल च कोई कर दे मुश्किल च कोई कर दे सैयदा ते मेहरबानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका सजाद दी जवानी रुलियां ने विच बाजारा रुलियां ने विच बाजारा क्यों आया ता कुरानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी सजाद दी जवानी गल चो न लव बावा रो रो सकीना खे गल चो न लव बावा रो रो सकीना खे कनवीर मार देसी कनवीर मार देसी मैनू कैद दी वीरानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका सजाद दी जवानी रुलियां ने विच बाजारा रुलियां ने विच बाजारा क्यों आया ता कुरानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी हो गम मुका गया है सजाद दी जवानी रस्सियां च हथ वेखे कुबरा दे मेहंदी वाले रस्सियां च हथ वेखे कुबरा दे मेहंदी वाले अखियां तो जारी होई अखियां तो जारी होई ता खून दी विरा Hi Sajjad, hi Sajjad, Ya Sajjad, hi Sajjad, hi Sajjad, Ya Sajjad, Ya Sajjad, hi Sajjad, Ya Sajjad, hi Sajjad, Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Can we recite a dua shifa al-marid, or dua sihat for Naween Kirmani, who is being treated for heart ailment in Boston Medical Center? Inshallah, bihaqi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, let us recite dua for this ill brother, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-muttar idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين الشهيد بالكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد الباكر وجعفر الصادق وموسى القاظم وعلي الرضا ومحمد الجواد ومحمد بن علي الهادي والحسن العسقري. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. والسلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن وقعبة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله تعالى مخرجه وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.
जो सस्ती मिल जाती है।